Today I'm going to share with you what identity clutter and identity trophies are, how to tell them apart, and what they ultimately have in common. I'm also going to talk about how your personal identity clutter is possibly keeping you stuck and stagnant in some area in your life. Hi there, I'm Anne-Katrin and I'm occasionally awake. I'm here to help you inspire your awakenings, heal yourself, and reawaken your life. Welcome and welcome back to my channel. So, what is identity clutter to begin with? Identity clutter is a term that is used specifically for clutter, for objects, for things that are tied to our ego identity, to how we identify, to who we want ourselves to be. Essentially, this is about the story we tell ourselves about ourselves and our lives. The story of what's important to us and what makes us unique. The story of what we need to function and be productive, and the story of what we need to be happy, to feel connected, to be fulfilled. We need to differentiate between things and objects that can be classified as either identity clutter or identity trophies. So anything and everything that's important to us is essentially identity associated. But most of these things are not clutter because we love them, we like them, we want them in our lives and around us. Most of these things evoke positive feelings in us because of the meaning we attach to them. They make us smile, they make us remember good times and look forward to better times. We could say that they represent all the values and preferences that we stand for. With identity clutter, however, it's quite the opposite. Identity clutter makes us cringe and remember either bad times or better times than the times we are currently in. They represent old values and interests that we used to have, that we used to identify with. They represent what we used to resonate with before a pivot, a change of heart, a change in direction. In short, identity clutter keeps part of ourselves stuck in time. So hear this, everything we consider identity clutter was once identity trophies. Or we wouldn't have kept them. We wouldn't have struggled to let go of these objects in the first place. I'm so glad you're here right now. So if you enjoy this, make sure to like and subscribe to become occasionally awake with me. Now let's take a closer look at how to tell clutter from trophies. So let's start with trophies. Trophies are usually displayed. We make space for them to be seen. They make us feel good and proud. Trophies refer to our actions and parts of our identity that went well, that we like to identify with. Trophies serve as inspiration and motivation in the present and for the future. Because they remind us of what we are capable of and what we stand for. And finally, trophies motivate us to continue in a certain direction. So if we want to be very precise here, we cannot actually say that all trophies have positive implications. Trophies can have negative implications that do not make us feel good. However, as I contrast trophies in general in this video with identity clutter, I chose to oversimplify the term and the concept of trophies. And I'm going to elaborate on the idea of negative implications and the different types of trophies in a future video. So to sum this up, trophies are identity-affirming objects that refer to the person we currently identify as and to the future version of who we want to become. Now let's move on to the typical characteristics of identity clutter. Identity clutter is usually hidden. We hide away these objects specifically because they are not a priority anymore or because we consciously choose to not want to see them anymore. Identity clutter can make us feel shame or guilt or regret or doubt. In short, it can make us feel really bad. Objects and things that we can categorize as identity clutter refer to things that did not go as planned, not as we envisioned them. Identity clutter glues us to the past in some way. It holds up our mind and our actions in the present and for the future. Identity clutter reminds us of what we thought we were capable of what we used to want and desire. And identity clutter can actually hinder us from moving in a new direction. To sum this up, identity clutter refers to objects and things that are associated with the person we used to be or the person we thought we would be. to a version of ourselves that we have outgrown. It becomes quite obvious that identity clutter does not only take up physical space, it takes up mental space, possibly a lot of it. So as long as we hang on to identity clutter hangs on to our self-concept. It's as if we refuse to update parts of our identity configuration and chose to keep it outdated and stuck in the past instead. No matter if we are aware or unaware of the reasons for why we refuse and struggle to release old identity aspects, there are always reasons behind that. And sometimes all that's needed is some self-awareness, some self-reflection on what a certain object that we can identify as identity clutter is still giving us, how it's still contributing to the person we identify as, and how we want to meet the respective identity clutter that is standing behind or rather in front of our old identity aspects. There are different possible reasons for why we might hang on to identity clutter. Sometimes that clutter is related to the incompletion of certain life phases, of relationships, work positions, things, goals, visions that we work towards and still we stop progressing until things were put on hold for various reasons. Identity clutter keeps asking us, what if? This means that finally making the decision to release identity clutter gives us space, not only in our physical space, but also in our mind and our heart, to give up the hope that the past could be any different. And maybe you noticed that's a famous definition of forgiveness. Releasing identity clutter therefore helps us to forgive ourselves for not becoming that person, for not continuing to be that person, that former or desired version of ourselves. And as we dare to go through that delayed mourning process, we allow ourselves to finally release those outdated identity aspects for good. Now that you can tell clutter from trophies and got a brief insight into the intricacies of identity clutter, I want to invite you to take a moment and reflect on the identity clutter hidden in your personal space. I want to invite you to ask yourself these following questions. Which objects and things are you holding on to that have stopped resonating with your heart, your soul, with your self-concept and identity, with your preferences and needs, and the person you identify as? Where and how are you hiding them? Under spider webs in the basement? Or at the back of a drawer in your actual living space? Or maybe you are not hiding them at all. Maybe they still sit on the shelf in plain sight. Now, if that's the case for you, I want to invite you to take a moment to reflect on the identity aspects, the actions and the functions associated to the space or the area in the room in which that identity clutter is. And then ask yourself, how much are you in the flow in that area of your life? Chances are high that you might be experiencing some form of blocks, challenges, delays, or dissatisfaction in relation to the space or area in which you are constantly and continually confronted with that outdated version of yourself. Now, this brings me to the great importance and significance of finally tackling identity clutter in the first place. Releasing what we've struggled to release can go so far beyond the mere process of decluttering something from our physical space. Releasing identity clutter can help us release stagnation and get back into the flow of life in the areas associated to our identity clutter. Both physically through its actual location in our space, and energetically by allowing our mindset to finally update to that new, current version of ourselves. So now you know how to tell identity clutter from trophies, why all identity clutter was a trophy at some point, why your personal identity clutter might keep you stuck and stagnant in some area in your life, and the questions to ask yourself to identify and reflect on your personal identity clutter. Got any occasional awakenings? Because now I'd like to hear from you. So please let me know what you take away from today's video and which past trophy of yours has turned into identity clutter that you want to release. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe. This video is related to the awakening to the ego self. If you want to know more about the 4 types of awakening and how to experience them in your life occasionally, visit me at occasionallyawake.com to inspire your awakenings. Bye!